Warning: this podcast episode contains swearing, drinking, discussions of violence towards women, and infanticide. Listener discretion is advised. Also, thanks for listening this season. You guys are the best.
Hello, and welcome to Demons and Bellinis, the podcast where we whip up a drink and talk about some spooky shit. I'm your noisy poltergeist roommate, Molly.
And I'm ready to get exercised, Ashley. Today, we will be discussing a worldwide phenomenon. This is something that happens all over the place. We are discussing the strange apparitions of women in white. Molly just got very excited. She threw herself on the floor.
I did.
I told you I was on theme today.
You are so on theme today.
I'm wearing white today.
She is.
So grab a beverage of your choosing and get cozy. And don't forget to check your closets for ass. And remember to stay peachy. So, as you all know, this is our last episode before we go on hiatus, and that is because both of us are going to be traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Molly more than me. But, so for this I decided to do something that's worldwide, and I do have a white woman for where you're going, and I have one for where I'm going.
Ooh, thank you.
You might be able to go see your white lady, depending if you get there. No, you said you're going to Normandy. So,
yes.
I will tell you more about her when we get to that. So this episode might get a little bit heavy at times because women in white are tragic, to say the least. Yeah, it's a little bit heavy, but this episode I'm going to try to keep it light, going to try to keep it fresh, light, and airy, you know.
Ooh, sexy.
And it gives me a lot of, like, Florence and the Machine, Hosier vibes, you know, so it might get a little bit heavy at times, but I did my best to just stay away from the graphicness of it. So let's go on our international trip around the world and talk about some ladies in white. So, I haven't gone back and checked, I should have, but I'm pretty sure in one of our episodes there was a lady in white that appeared. We didn't really talk about her too much, but I think we did mention one.
I feel like, yeah,
it might have been in one of yours.
Maybe.
Someone go back and check. But they're super common. And I'm realizing, like, there's a pattern here. So I decided to delve into what that pattern is. And I was kind of sad when I figured it out. Anyways, so the apparition of a woman in white, one of the most common, and most often it is spirits of women in white dresses. And it's that's one of the most common things that we think of in hauntings, is we think of a sad Victorian woman in a white gown walking up and down the hallways.
John Mulaney.
Wailing. Right? Yeah, right? That's what we think of. They're that common in stories and folklore. I will be talking about folklore ladies in white as well.
I love it.
Yes. So the basic Wikipedia description of a woman in white is, quote, a type of female ghost dressed in all white, reportedly seen in rural areas and associated with some local legend of tragedy, which is kind of common. A lot of them are pretty rural. Actually, yeah, all of them are rural. God damn. So there are several stories, legends, and folklore about women in white that include La Llorona, the White Lady of Kinsale in Ireland, the Lady in White that haunts Balete Drive in the Philippines, the Lady in White that haunts Jenny Dixon Beach in Australia, to name a few. So there are so many. I could do 4 episodes on how many stories of ladies in white there are.
And La Llorona is actually made. It's going to be a film. Yeah.
Did her dirty.
Oh, don't do my girl dirty.
It seems like it's just like, it's from the people who did The Conjuring, so you just know it's going to be very dramatized. I just hope that they at least talk to, like, for this I'm not going to talk about La Llorona because it is such a very popular story, but also just, yeah.
Didn't BuzzFeed do an episode on La Llorona?
Yes, they did.
Cool.
So I'm going to tell you a few stories of these ladies in white. point out some similarities, because I think it's a super interesting phenomenon, and it might be a reflection of a lot of feminist issues that we're dealing with today. So we're going to start in Canada, because we are from Canada. We are going to Quebec for our first stop. So Montmorency Falls in Quebec. Legend goes that there was a French fort at this location at the bottom of the falls. This gave the French strong defenses against the British Army during the 7 Years' War. So in July of 1759, a young couple at the fort was getting ready to be married. Their names were Louis and...
Louis?
Yeah, Louis. How do you say that name? I should have practiced my names.
Mathilda?
Mathilda? Let's go with that. Mathilda. It's a French version of Matilda, I'm gonna guess. However, before they could be married, there was an attack on the fort and Louis died in battle. Mathilda, however, was so overcome with sadness that she is said to have thrown herself over the falls in her wedding gown, creating the legend of the White Lady that haunts Montmorency Falls. There's even a Canada Post stamp for this ghost. I will post it on our Instagram with this episode.
Gosh.
But yeah, that's a real stamp you can buy.
So cool.
I think it's very interesting because like women in white are so commemorated in like haunted locations and stuff like that. Is like it because it just makes people feel sad hearing these stories, and their heart just immediately goes out to these women. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how they're commemorated in ways that other hauntings aren't, and they seem to be like more accepted than other hauntings too. Yeah. But people just like, oh yeah, there's a woman in white walking around. People are like, oh, you know? Yeah. Instead of like, yeah. So now we're going all the way over to the Philippines now. Okay. So this one is located on Balete Drive in Quezon City, which is a district of Manila in the Philippines. So Balete Drive is I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong, is a small, narrow street named for the trees that line it. This road was first existed before the 70s, and it wasn't paved until the mid-70s, and that's when the legends about this road began. While the stories vary, they all describe a young woman meeting a terrible fate on this road and being buried or dying near a large balete tree near the center of the road. But that tree is no longer there. There's only just small trees now. Okay. But there used to be this one really big one. The road is about like a kilometer long, so about halfway. But the halfway point was where this big tree was. Mm-hmm. It should be noted, and that in Filipino folklore, there are creatures like the Diwata, which they're similar to like European fairies. I don't want to say that they are similar, but that's like the loose translation. I'm not Filipino, so I'm sorry for saying anything wrong here. Please feel free to correct me. Then there's the Capre or tree giants and a creature called the Tikbalang. They're said to live in these trees, as these trees are doorways between worlds, and these trees are also said to house ghosts and spirits. So a lot of people claim that this white lady in white is trapped there because of these trees. Right, yeah. So a journalist named Neil H. Cruz describes one story he heard about a police captain encountering this lady in white. He says that, quote, one night, while the captain was driving down Balete Drive in his patrol car, he saw a woman dressed in white hitchhiking at the side of the road. She was alone, the road was dark, and the captain knew it wasn't exactly a safe place to be at that time of night. He stopped and asked her where she was headed. She asked him if he could drop her off at the corner of Balete Drive and Espana Extension. She climbed into the back seat, he locked the doors for safety, and they continued on their way. But when they reached Espana Extension, the captain turned around and found that she had vanished. The doors of the car were still locked. End quote. She's most often seen by drivers walking up or down the road. Sometimes these drivers will offer to give her a ride, or she will appear in the back seat of their cars. She's said to be very beautiful, but sometimes she appears bruised and bloody. But the most common thing is that she is wearing white.
That sounds very eerily familiar to a lot of the ghost stories that I've heard about the Highway of Tears. That sounds like the stories that my aunt and or a lot of my aunts and my grandma used to tell me when I was up in my family is majority from up in Smithers, which is kind of around Prince George in BC, and there's this massive highway where all of these murdered and missing Indigenous women have gone missing, and that's a very common ghost tale is having that hitchhiking woman appear in your backseat, or you pick up a woman and then she disappears.
Yeah, this is going to be a very common thread in these stories, is a lot of these ladies in white will be standing at the side of the road, and they will either be asking for help or they'll ask for a ride, and then they disappear.
So sounds like the Supernatural episode that did that. Got it semi right. Vancouver has a hitchhiking ghost. She isn't a lady in white, but she's can be seen on the road up to UBC. Apparently in the 70s a young girl went missing, and I've heard about that one. And she died, and then people now, they'll be driving up there and they'll see her standing at the side of the road hitchhiking, and so they'll give her a ride, and then she gives them a piece of paper with the address of her parents' house on it, and she says, I need to go here. And then when they get there, she's gone, which is kind of sad. Yeah, it's really sad. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. This is kind of sad, but like the aesthetic. So we'll end it light. I promise. There's like some of these stories are really sad. Some of them are really cool. Typically, it's the folklore ones are a lot more cooler. Yeah. So going back over to America now, we find ourselves in Rochester, New York. So today there is a large ruin of what looks like a medieval castle. Locals will call this site the White Lady's Castle in Durand Eastman Park. This building was once a hotel and dining hall nearby Lake Ontario. Little remains of it now, except for a few sets of curved stairs and a tall stone wall. So sometime in the 1900s or late 1800s, the other thing with these stories is that there aren't really any set dates, and some people claim, like, oh yeah, you can name these women, like, you can find out who they actually are, but even then, it's pretty difficult too, and so it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly the dates and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's kind of like, we have to guesstimate a little bit here. Sometime in the 1900s or late 1800s, and there are many stories about the why, but they all have similar elements, and they end in the same kind of way. So a mother lost her daughter near the building in the park. The girl's body was never found, and it's said that the mother went mad and she threw herself into Lake Ontario. She also had 2 hounds that apparently died with her and haunt the park with her. So the mother's spirit continues to haunt Durand Eastman Park and around the... I know this story. I was thinking about covering it, actually.
Yeah. She is said to chase men into the lake, shake their cars, and even scratch them, because it's assumed that her daughter was attacked by some men. In 2017, after a windstorm, park goers discovered a large chunk of wood had been ripped from a tree, and it appears to be in the shape of a woman in white. Oh. You see that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
Right? So that I found that sort of kind of sad, but you're starting to see a lot of trends here, and a lot of very similar things happening in these stories. Our next stop is in Madisonville, Louisiana. Like I said, Satan's in the South. So this lady in white goes by another name. She's called the Silk Lady. She's said to haunt Palmetto Flats, a swampy area near the intersection of Johnson Street and Galatas Road. So for centuries,
you gotta use quotes there. She's using quotes because,
there's no exact dates, so it makes me mad. But people have claimed to see a young woman in white riding a horse. She has long silky hair and a gown that is said that's white, but it glows, like she glows blue. Or other times when people see her, she is standing, but her feet don't touch the ground, and she cackles like a banshee. One resident born in 1917 remembers that, quote, "You didn't walk on that road at night. We were told as kids that was where the Silk Lady lived," end quote. The legend says that a young girl was riding her horse to meet her lover, or her boyfriend.
What if it was her girlfriend? It can be her girlfriend.
It's stated her boyfriend.
Okay.
It could be her girlfriend, though.
Yeah.
But I changed it to lover, though, because I think it's... My parents, they were at this party, and this couple introduced themselves to my parents as... I'll just use, like, fake names. I'm Bob, and this is my lover. Wife.
Oh.
So it was his wife, but he called her his lover. My parents were so like, about it. Like they didn't know how to respond, and so now it's just become like a joke in my house where my dad will be like, "Me and my lover are going out." I'm like, "Can you just say Mom?" Anyways, So this young woman, she was riding her horse to meet her lover when her horse was spooked by a snake. She was thrown from her horse and she hit her head, and ultimately she died as a result of her injuries, which is very tragic and sad. Yeah. But now she's a cool silk lady.
Silk lady.
Yeah, I love that name. So our next jump takes us to Hawaii, and we're going to talk about some Hawaiian folklore. So this story is one that apparently many have grown up hearing. Children were told the story of Madame Pele. She's also known as the goddess of fire. While others claim that she was just a woman looking for lost love, she's typically referred to as either Madame Pele or the goddess of fire. So most people tend to encounter her on the highway between the Tropical Plantation and the Cali Golf Course on the island of Maui, but she has been seen on all of the islands in the Hawaiian chain. She is typically dressed in all white. Sometimes she is a beautiful young woman, sometimes she is an old beggar woman, possibly as a test to those who encounter her. It's said that if they are kind to her, she rewards them, but if they are cruel or greedy to her, they are punished. Typically, either their possessions will be destroyed, there might be a death in the family. That's another thing with these women in white. They tend to be death omens, and we'll get to that later, because there are some cool ones later. So drivers will sometimes offer to give her a ride, and she sits in the back seat. I also saw somewhere that apparently she really likes cigarettes.
Good to know.
So not long afterwards, she disappears. She is often portrayed as a wanderer. Other common sightings also happen near Kailua, which is one of the most active volcanoes in the world. People claim to see her image in the flowing lava. And there's actually a picture. I think it's right there. If you see her kind of there.
Yeah, okay.
There's also, like, a few different ways that you could see it.
Yeah.
But the photographer claims that was the image of Madame Pele in
we'll
the
post that online.
Yeah, all these photos will be online. So Madame Pele also curses the volcanic stones that tourists like to take from Hawaii. Don't take it doesn't belong to you.
Yep.
So thousands of volcanic stones have actually been mailed back to Hawaii because of the trouble, such as bad luck and misfortune, that they brought to those who took them. And there's there's a lot of discourse over tourists being super disrespectful in Hawaii, and I think that's a huge problem and issue, and it's very performative. And stuff like that, and it just feels icky. I know I'm going there at the end of the month, but I just want to lie on the beach. I don't and be super respectful, and that's how I like.
Yeah, there was that whole Jennifer Lawrence thing where she what was it? She scratched her butt
on sacred rocks. Yeah, that was disgusting.
Yeah,
it was super gross.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, no,
I don't. That shouldn't be a disclaimer. Wherever
you go, be
be as respectful as you would in your own home climate.
Yeah, if someone came into your house and was gonna take this, gonna take that, had a great time, I'm gonna eat some food, bye.
If someone rubbed their butt on your grandfather's antique chair,
bad.
Yeah.
It's also, and it's something as small as taking a rock. I mean, and in my own defense, not in my own defense, in outing myself, when I just took a geology course, and so I learned a lot about earth science things and stuff like that, as I needed for my degree, for my science credit. But I really love earth science, right? And I love the kind of science of how the earth works and how volcanoes work and how land is formed and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh man, it'd be super cool to grab bring home a little volcanic rock. And then I read this and I was like, oh wait a minute, the white in me just jumped out. the white middle-aged woman in me just jumped right out.
Yeah.
So it's don't worry, I will not take anything unless I pay for it. I really want a Hawaiian shirt.
I have many Hawaiian shirts.
I want to buy an actual Hawaiian shirt from Hawaii. That's the only.
I have a Hawaiian shirt from Hawaii.
That's the only thing I plan on bringing back with me.
Yeah.
But I will leave Madame Pele's volcanic stones alone, as most people should. I just love the name Madame Pele too. Yeah. She's a madam. Respect her.
Of course we do. We respect all women in white.
So our next jump takes us all the way to the Netherlands now. So in kind of the local folklore. It's kind of a blend of like Germanic and Slavic folklore. There is what is known as white weaven. They are mythical creatures that are benevolent, but they can also be malevolent. So you got to be careful. Which is like kind of the same with a lot of majority of women. Stop assuming that because we look nice, we're gonna be nice. I'm serious. Legit.
The bus driver.
Like what? Like, it's so expected that, like, and I just saw a post about this the other day, and it's so true. Like, women go through such hardships, we go through such bullshit, and we're still expected to just be nice and polite at the end of it. And we're still expected to just be trusting of the people around it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Unless you, like, have earned it, I will not give you my trust. Unless you have earned it, like...
Yeah.
And so it's like, and women should have the right to get angry. I mean, it seems like we don't. Like, right? Versus, like, if a woman gets angry, it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, like, having to smile through the encounter that I had with the guy who asked me out at work and was really gross to me was not great.
Yeah, and it's like, the having to smile and stuff like that comes from a place of fear. We're smiling because we're scared, because if we don't smile... we could end up dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Another encounter that I had was I was working in a mall. I was alone at a kiosk, and this guy came over with a group of like maybe 8 friends and asked me out, and I told him I was gay because that's my excuse and that's valid. And then like he stayed in the food court, because I was in a food court, for like a solid like 30 minutes.
Ugh.
And I was texting one of my guy friends saying, I really need to go to the bathroom, but I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think you're overreacting. That's not going to happen.
Honey.
Yes, maybe it probably wouldn't happen, but there's a chance that it could happen because, and I couldn't be like rude to these guys because they know my place of employment. Yeah.
And it's like, that's like the common thing for a lot of women is just like, we always live with that. It could happen hanging over us, right? Yeah. Like that, like last night when I was like, just like the window washers happened to leave open a door, and there was an incident with one of our locks being busted, and so I like started panicking because I was like, if somebody gets into the stairwell, if they break into the stairwell, they can get up to my floor. My lock is not, it's just a regular door lock, like. And I like started crying. I was so scared of just like that what if, right? So it's and it's a privilege to not live with that, for sure. Anyways, so yeah, if women get angry, I believe in you. It's okay to be angry.
It's okay.
Anyways, we love you. Back to the white weaven. I love saying that, white weaven. So these white weaven, they are related to witches, but they also have similarities with banshees, fairies, and elves. As benevolent creatures, they aid in childbirth and offer good advice. As malevolent creatures, they switch newborns, which is a common story in other European folklore, which is kind of gross. It's my least favorite thing of folklore.
The changeling is disgusting.
It's so gross!
Because... if you're wondering why we're upset about it, it was a way for parents to be like, oh no, this is a fairy child, when they had a child who was born with things such as disabilities.
Disabilities or anything else in that.
Yeah, in that
wide
range.
Yeah.
If there was a child that was anything other than typical, I use in quotes. Yeah. They were described to be a fairy child.
Yeah, so that's... they as malevolent creatures, they're said to switch newborns, abduct women, or punish people who have treated them, the white weaven, badly.
That's valid.
Yeah. And the other two things, not so much, but I understand the other one. Yeah. Which is another common thing if we go back to Madame Pele, where if you are greedy or if you're cruel to her, she punishes you. So
that's just karma, babes.
And also what I think is really cool is that you still see I love it when aspects of folklore are still alive today. So wisps of mist or fog banks are often called white weaven. Like fog in the morning. Yeah. So that will be called white weaven. Which, like, that's my favorite thing, is just seeing folklore still alive today. And like little things in everyday conversations like that. Like folklore for sure is still alive today. I'm not saying that it isn't. It's just like it's not as widely talked about as it used to be.
Mhm.
Because folklore was just how people saw the world and how
Yeah.
they lived in the world. And now we have the internet, and we don't
Yeah.
have to assume that it's vampires that's killing everybody when it's actually tuberculosis.
And that's why, like, folklore is such an interesting study, just, like, seeing what people put their faith in, what their philosophy in life was, and I think that can tell a lot about cultures.
Like, I would love to do, like, to talk about the actual origins of vampires, but that's been done so many times.
Yeah.
But it was a way to explain tuberculosis, because people didn't know what it was, and tuberculosis is, like, in other forms of illness, the way that it just, like, seemed to suck emphasis on the word suck, the life out of people for vampires, right? So people thought that it was a creature that was actually draining the life from them, and they came up with vampires. So, do you know that there's actually, in the 90s, Lord talked about it, there was a case where people still believe that there are vampires, like the traditional vampires, still alive, when so they actually got arrested for digging up a body and burning it because they thought it was a vampire.
Supernatural fans get busted.
No, it was in,
no,
it was
I'm
in
joking
Romania.
Because, like, of course it happened in Romania. I have a friend who's from Romania, and she talks about it all the time. It's very funny. If you do live in Romania and you love it, then that's valid. Just from my one friend, she's like, yeah,
Romania.
Romania.
To go to Romania.
I really want to go as well. It's actually kind of would be cheap for me where I'm going.
Oh,
to
yeah,
fly to Romania. It'd be like only like $100 to $200 for a round trip.
Yep. So there's one other place in the Netherlands called the Schienwildes Boston Forest. I apologize for my poor pronunciation. Anyways, so according to historical archives, there was a castle farm, so a castle with a kind of like peasantry farm around it, in that forest that was built around 1396. In the late 1600s, this castle was burned down, and it's said to have killed the daughter of the lord who owned the castle. Another story suggests that a woman was burned there on her wedding day by a jealous nobleman. Either way, this woman she met a very fiery fate.
Yeah.
However it happened, many claim to see a woman in white wandering the forest in a long white dress. She only appears at midnight or on nights with the full moon. Just like, up.
That's
Up.
the aesthetic of, like, it's a very tragic situation, but the idea of being burned in your castle in the 1600s and then haunting the forest at midnight on full moons, that gets me very excited.
Florence the Machine wishes she
Yeah.
could. Florence the Machine is a living woman in white.
Yeah.
She really is.
Oh, God.
I want to be a living woman in white.
Yeah.
If you come near me, I'm just going to start screaming at you.
I want to have the aesthetic of Florence and the Machine meet Stevie Nicks.
If you see me twice, it's an omen of death.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
You died long ago.
I died long ago.
Our next trip takes us to kind of a surprising place. It takes us to Australia. G'day.
Why am I not surprised?
That one's for all the people who listen to this who's in the same fandom as me. I love my group of bad Australian YouTuber boys. They're just bad. Anyways, this takes us to I've been dreading saying this word. This takes us to New South Wales, near, I'm just gonna say it, and it's probably gonna sound bad, but I'm gonna try.
Okay.
Wearabelong.
Wearabelong?
Wearabelong.
Wearabelong?
I'm only saying it once.
Wearabelong.
Shut up. Anyways. National Park. So many people have claimed to have encountered a young woman hitchhiking. When people pick her up, she likes to sit in the back seat again, like a couple of other of our lovely ladies in white who like to hitchhike. She doesn't say much, and after a little while, she disappears. These sightings began in the 50s. It's said that a young woman was murdered by a group of men at the local beach. She had been hitchhiking. Most people have named this ghost after the beach she haunts, Jenny Dixon. Not only does she appear near the road, but she also appears on the beach asking for people by help by holding her hands out to them. Some believe, however, though, that the woman who appears on the road and the woman who appears on the beach are two separate entities. So you have two women in white in the same area.
I hope they're BFFs.
This is just a theory, though.
I want to share a Bellini with me, you, and then the two ghosts. Girls' night out.
Girls' night out. Girls' night, girls' night.
Ghouls' night, ghouls' night.
So anyways, the girl on the beach, this is why people tend to think that it's actually two different entities at Jenny Dixon Beach. Mm-hmm. The girl on the beach wears a 19th century dress, while the girl on the road wears a dress from the 50s.
Right.
Which are very distinct.
Those are the two very different
Very
things.
distinct. The coastline that Jenny Dixon Beach sits on is known for its shipwrecks, especially in the 1800s to the 1900s, and it wasn't until a lighthouse was built in 1903 that kind of
Shipwrecks,
stopped.
You say?
So Molly has a hard-on for the woman who was burned alive and then wanders the forest at midnight on a full moon in a white gown. And now she also has a hard-on for this other woman who possibly drowned and now wanders a beach in Australia.
I have a hard-on
in a white
for that
Victorian gown.
Don't kink shame me.
She has to listen to people yelling and she asks them for help and they just stare at her. Help her!
Help her. Let me have my aesthetics.
No, I know. I'm 100% here for them too. I just, the way you're saying it is so funny. Like, these people drowned, Molly. These people died.
The aesthetic is good.
People are dying, Molly.
No, in all seriousness, like, it's a very serious matter, and I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just very into that aesthetic.
I love to walk around the beach in Australia in a hot Australia in a Victorian gown. Pulling myself out of the ocean, like...
No, you would want to be a Gibson girl.
just clawing my way out of the beach, like... I can't afford to go to a convention, but I want to meet the Misfits!
Yeah, no, I'm imagining. You swim all the way from Canada over to Australia.
I am committed! I want to hug you!
You're just covered head to toe in sand.
And seaweed. Crabs.
And tears.
For those of you at home, when I said I can't afford to go to a con and I threw myself on the floor.
And then started miming clawing.
And then I pretended to be clawing out of the beach on Molly's floor and I'm covered in lint.
I'm sorry, I need to vacuum.
You do.
I vacuumed like 2 weeks ago. I don't know how this happens. I wear a lot of black.
Oh god, I can't breathe. Anyway.
You made yourself laugh.
Two lovely Australian ladies. Please help them. Of course, I couldn't talk about white ladies without talking about Irish ladies in white. Where Molly's looking at me. So, like I mentioned at the start of the episode, this takes us to Kinsale, Ireland. The legend goes that one of the local fort soldiers got married to a local girl and they stayed at the fort on their wedding night. However, the soldier had night watch that night, but instead of doing his job, he got drunk that night to celebrate his marriage.
Bad idea.
Yeah. However, drinking while on duty is not allowed and punishable by death. As the legend goes.
When is this?
Nobody could say.
Okay.
The soldier was shot for his misbehavior, so it must have been in the 1600s to 1900s. Mm-hmm. Just a long time.
Yeah.
Anyways, his bride was so struck by grief that she threw herself off the fort's wall. We're seeing some patterns here too. Women love throwing themselves off of things. Sorry, cut that out.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah.
That was bad.
It seems as though a lot of these legends are somewhat likening women being heartbroken and being weak with suicide, which I think is pretty problematic.
That is really gross.
As fun as the aesthetic is.
It is, yeah, it's really gross. So many people claim to have seen this lady in white wandering around the fort, which is called Charles Fort, by soldiers and their families for centuries. One story claims that a young girl had seen the White Lady in white smiling at her, and her father and the man beside her did not see her. And another story claims that a nurse saw the lady in white standing over the bed of a sleeping child. Many claim to have also been pushed downstairs by her as well. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting. It seems like there's a couple pieces missing to that story.
Yeah.
But there is a lady in white there. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I could not talk about ladies in white without talking about banshees! I want to be a banshee.
Yeah.
I scream enough.
You do scream enough.
So banshees, as we all know, are female spirits who are considered to be omens of death. They roam the countryside, and when they are heard wailing, you can predict the death of someone you know is you can predict that the death of someone you know is imminent. Banshees appear as a young, beautiful woman or an old hag, which I think is kind of gross. Aging is beautiful.
It is.
Yeah. But I want to be a hag.
I really like the, while I'm not a Wiccan, I really like the imagery, I guess it could also be considered, like, Greek mythology, but the image of the maiden, the woman, and the crown.
Oh, yeah. Me up.
Me up with that.
So, banshees are often dressed in gray or white, and they always have long hair. It's said that some banshees also can be seen, they'll have a comb, and the way that they comb their hair is compared to tearing their hair out in anguish. Banshees also are said to target particular families in Ireland.
Right.
So there's a lot of families that claim to have encountered banshees.
Do you have the names of them?
You can find them online. I didn't feel like... It was a lot of,
Yeah. My family's Irish.
I mean, I can send you the link where all the names are listed. So this takes us to our final location. This one's for you, Molly.
Thank you.
Our French ladies in white. So this takes us to Abbaye de Montmer, which is north of Paris in the Normandy region of France. And there sits the 13th century abbey, which was consecrated in 1209 by the Archbishop of Rouen. This abbey is said to be haunted by many monks who were killed by revolutionaries in 1790, as it is thought that the monks were hiding a secret fortune. The abbey was sold then to the government, and the land passed through many hands throughout the 1800s. Many claim to have seen a glow coming from the library windows when there is no one there. Paintings are turned around so they're facing the wall or found on the floor without their strings or nails broken, which is really gross. Mm-hmm. It's just anything to do with paintings and hauntings, I can't do it. That legitimately terrifies me.
I'm so here for that.
Like the one scene most often I think of is the one scene in It with the painting. I still can't handle it. I've seen It how many times and I still can't handle that scene.
I've seen It a lot.
I still can't handle that scene.
Yeah.
Like the first time I saw it, I was like the most scared. Of that whole movie. Yeah,
that was a terrifying scene.
Also, just like the way the woman's painting is very body horror, and I can't do body horror.
Yeah, it's very surrealistic.
I think there's also... Is there a painting scene in Haunting a Hill House? I feel like there is.
I can't remember yet. Maybe.
It's used a lot in horror films. But
yeah.
Like,
it also kind of reminds me of like the picture of Dorian Gray. A little bit. When
it's used right, I think it's terrifying.
I saw this post that was the Funko Pop figure of Dorian Gray.
I hate that. And that also people claim to have heard footsteps in the stone hallways of this abbey. There is also a bedroom in the abbey referred to as the Pink Bedroom. A young woman who slept in the room in the 1920s or 30s, again, dates are very slippery. She was engaged to the owner's son. She was tormented by objects being thrown around the room, and what she claimed was a malevolent presence. Mm-hmm. In the morning, she broke off her engagement with the son and said that she, quote, would never want to live in a place like this again, and took off back to Paris.
That's how it be sometimes.
So an exorcism was performed on the abbey, and things seemed to quiet down. During World War II, an English paratrooper claims that the ghost of a monk saved his life when the soldier was spotted by Nazis. The monk led the English paratrooper to a place in the abbey where he could hide safely without being discovered, and the monk disappeared. again, just throwing it back to my World War One, that was World War Two. Again, there's so many stories about soldiers and ghosts.
Yeah.
But again, throwing it back to that episode, which is probably one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
The legend of the White Lady that haunts the Abbey is one of the most popular stories, but it's unclear exactly who she is and where she came from. People claim to see her walking among the Abbey's arches and around the ponds. The legend states that if one sees her, it's best to look away quickly. She wears all white, but what is most important about her is her gloves. We love a lady who accessorizes. And this bitch knows how to accessorize.
Don't call her a bitch.
Oh no, she's a bad bitch. When you see the theory as to who she is, you're gonna be like, bad bitch.
I'm kind of tempted to do a weekend trip up here now.
So, if she's wearing white gloves, you can expect something good will happen to you that year. However, if she's wearing black gloves, you will experience a great misfortune, and if you see her twice, she's a death omen. And you will meet a bad end. Some say that this lady in white is Empress Matilda, who died in 1167. She had a claim to the English throne as her father was King Henry I. She married the Holy Roman Emperor Henry V. I'm pretty sure his name Henry. In 1114, after her younger brother died, there was a struggle to find the next successor for the English throne.
Right.
Her cousin Stephen of Blois took the throne when her father died, and this sparked a civil war in England. She died in 1167, and it's unclear why exactly she would haunt Abbey de Montfermeil, though it is suspected that she may have lived at the Abbey for some time during this her lifetime.
Right.
And again, I just did some brief history, but Empress Matilda was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Bad bitch.
Cool. Bad Bad
So that brings us back home.
Alrighty.
So these are only a handful of the countless stories of sad women in white. The similarities between them are really quite painful, and I think it's a clear reflection of how women alive are treated by the world around them. The majority of these women were young. They lost their husbands to war. They lost their children. They lost their minds. They lost everything. Yeah. Right? They are women who have been assaulted or murdered by men. They are women who loved, and they loved very strongly, who felt very strong emotions at the time of their death. And I think love can hold a spirit here as much as hate can. Yeah. And I think that's another thing about women is that when we love, we love. Right? So I think that there's something also to be said about the color white. Of course, when we think about white, it's often about purity or virginity, but I think it goes way beyond that. Yeah. Like, for me, I love the idea of just running through a forest in a white dress, right? That's shit. Or like you said, like you wandering through a forest at midnight in a white, or pulling yourself out of the waves in Australia in a white gown. Like, it feels free. Like, I don't know how else to explain it except like freedom or peacefulness, or maybe even the feeling of being wild, which is the case of the Banshees and Madame Pele, right? Who are powerful supernatural ladies. And I think also, I'm gonna get real deep here, and you're welcome to think about this, but I feel like white is women's color for mourning.
Yeah, no, I've heard of certainly funeral traditions where people wear white instead of black.
Yeah, but go deeper than that. just something.
Can you please expand?
Just think about that, right? Where it's like all these women were white, mostly because they're wearing their wedding dress, right? And in a lot of ways, women are so confined by you get married, you have kids, you do this, you do that. Right. And whenever you think of a young woman, you think of her in a white, cute little dress, right? When it's and that's being that's what we are confined to, right? So it's almost like we're mourning ourselves when we don white. I feel great. So it's kind of so it's when we want to be wild and rugged and walk through the forest in our white dresses, it's almost being we're taking that back. Right, yeah. Right? We're gonna get our white dresses dirty. Yeah. So
let it drag through the mud.
Something that
sticks in my hair, tits out.
Crawling out onto the beach in Australia.
Witchcraft in the woods.
Yeah.
Catch me out there doing witchcraft in the woods with twigs in my hair and my white dress in tatters.
To all you ladies out there, feel free to get your white dresses dirty. Please get them dirty.
That was such a lovely ending.
Yeah, so, and my other note is to end with is, like, if you do go to any of these places, be very respectful. Maybe leave some flowers for these ladies.
Yeah.
They've had a tough time of it. They're just walking around. Would you have a Bellinis with any of these women, Molly?
200%. I have a Bellinis with all of them.
All of them?
I already talked about that. Girls' night out.
Girls' night. Yeah, we're gonna get a girls' night. We're gonna get a girls' night with all of these, like, ladies in white and just girls' night.
Girls' night. Girls' night. Girls' night. Coven meeting in the woods.
So go out there, get your white dresses dirty, have a Bellini. We'll see you in August. Bye!
Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we hope that you enjoyed the episode. This episode features the voices of Molly Lorette and Ashley Smith. Our theme music was composed and produced by Larry Lorette. Our cover image was designed by Ashley Smith, and sound editing was done by Molly Lorette. Have any comments, concerns, or cases you want us to cover? Email us at demonsandbellinis@gmail.com. You can also find us at Demons and Bellinis on Tumblr, Demons and Bellinis on Instagram, and at DBellinis on Twitter. That's capital D and capital B. You'll also be able to find case pictures tweeted out there and posted to our Instagram. Also, make sure that if you like what we do here, drop us a donation at Ko-fi, which you can find through our Twitter. Thanks again, and we hope that you keep your ears open.